In the mountainous highlands of Ethiopia, a Jewish community known as Beta Israel, or the House of Israel, had lived in relative isolation for centuries. Their origins are shrouded in mystery, though their traditions claimed lineage from the lost tribes of Israel. Beta Israel maintained their distinct faith, culture, and customs while living among neighboring ethnic groups who largely followed Ethiopian Orthodox Christianity. By the 10th century, the growth of the Christian kingdom and intensifying religious zeal put Beta Israel in a challenging position, particularly as they began to seek resettlement in regions that offered greater security and freedom to practice their faith. According to Beta Israel tradition, their roots trace back to King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, whose son, Menelik I, is said to have founded the Ethiopian royal line. Over time, the Beta Israel community developed a unique Judaic practice that blended Old Testament traditions with local customs. Despite these differences, the 10th century saw the rise of a more organized, zealous Christian state in Ethiopia, which gradually expanded its reach. Christian leaders viewed the adherence of Beta Israel to Judaism as a challenge to their religious unity. As a result, Beta Israel communities began seeking safer territories to continue their way of life without persecution. During this era, groups from Beta Israel attempted to settle in regions further away from the core Christian communities. This movement aimed to escape Christian encroachment and find more isolated, defensible positions in the Semien Mountains and other remote areas. The resettlement efforts faced considerable resistance. Many Christian Ethiopians, especially local lords and clergy, regarded Beta Israel's distinct religious identity as heretical. Resettlement in new areas often meant competition over resources, as the fertile lands Beta Israel sought were also coveted by Christian Ethiopian farmers. This tension frequently erupted into violent skirmishes and raids, which left lasting scars on both communities. The Beta Israel faced accusations of rejecting Christianity and harboring beliefs that directly opposed the teachings of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. This perceived threat to religious orthodoxy intensified the Christian kingdom's hostility. Christian rulers, often under pressure from powerful church leaders, dispatched soldiers to prevent Beta Israel from expanding into new territories. In response, Beta Israel communities fortified their settlements and organized themselves into defensive alliances, which allowed them to maintain relative autonomy despite the adversities they faced. In the midst of this turmoil, a significant figure emerged, Queen Gudit, also known as Judit. Though her true origins remain uncertain, some legends describe her as a warrior queen of Beta Israel descent, who led a fierce rebellion against the Christian kingdom. Gudit is said to have challenged the Solomonic dynasty and launched a devastating series of raids on Christian territories, even allegedly burning churches and claiming lands for her followers. While some modern historians suggest that Gudit may not have been directly associated with Beta Israel, her story became symbolic for many in the Jewish community. Her resistance and defiance of the Christian kingdom inspired subsequent generations of Beta Israel, who continued to endure as a minority with a distinct religious identity in Ethiopia. Gudit's rebellion had a profound psychological impact, stirring fears of Jewish insurgency among Christian leaders. This only further motivated them to hinder Beta Israel's attempts to resettle and expand. Despite constant pressure, Beta Israel's efforts to resettle in new areas bore some fruit. They found refuge in the mountainous regions where the challenging terrain provided a natural barrier against large-scale military campaigns by the Christian kingdom. These rugged, isolated areas became centers for Beta Israel life, and they developed strong, self-sufficient communities that relied on farming and trade. The Beta Israel created an elaborate social system, including their own form of governance, legal codes based on Judaic principles, and a community-based economy. This period was marked by adaptation to the highland environment as Beta Israel devised unique agricultural practices suited to the mountain landscape. They built terraced farms, developed irrigation techniques, and became proficient in metalworking, weaving, and pottery. These skills not only provided a means of survival, but also allowed Beta Israel to sustain themselves even in times of conflict and adversity. Beta Israel's resettlement also highlighted their deep commitment to their faith and culture. While Christian Ethiopians sought to convert them, Beta Israel preserved their religious identity, practicing their own form of Judaism that included observance of the Sabbath, kosher dietary laws, and ritual circumcision. Their spiritual leaders, known as Kesok, guided their communities and reinforced a sense of identity amid the pressures to assimilate. In the face of religious persecution, Beta Israel maintained a distinct cultural identity, adapting ancient Judaic traditions to Ethiopian customs. This blending of influences is seen in their liturgical practices and rituals, which incorporate elements unique to Ethiopian culture. By establishing new settlements, Beta Israel created a cultural sanctuary where they could freely express their beliefs and customs, fostering a sense of solidarity and continuity. The Ethiopian resettlement of Beta Israel in the 10th century laid the foundation for centuries of Jewish life in Ethiopia. Through resilience, adaptation, and the defiance symbolized by figures like Queen Gudit, Beta Israel secured their place in the Ethiopian highlands. Despite ongoing conflict with Christian authorities, the isolation of their mountain settlements allowed them to preserve their identity as a distinct, independent community for generations. This period of resettlement is remembered as a crucial chapter in Beta Israel's history. It demonstrated their enduring commitment to their faith, even under duress, and shaped their role within Ethiopian society. Though they remained a minority, Beta Israel's influence can be seen in the distinct Ethiopian Judaic culture that survives to this day. The struggle for resettlement became a defining narrative, inspiring future generations who would continue to live in Ethiopia until modern times, when many Beta Israel were finally reunited with their Jewish brethren in Israel.